I'm here with Dr. Stephen Krashen, who is about to talk about the intermediate level. He's in Denver, Colorado for IFLT and Fluency Fast and on his way to Fluency Fast in San Antonio. But if you can't join us, this is the time to be able to ask questions and hear from the currently voluntarily unemployed former university professor, Dr. Stephen Krashen.
And I'm coming to you at a disadvantage because I've only had 2 cups of coffee. Karen has made me a third. It's extra strong, so I'll be slowly achieving consciousness as we proceed. I'm going to talk today a little bit about the intermediate level. What do we do beyond the beginning level? And before I do that, I want to review the general theory. Every talk I've been giving the last couple of years, I've been going through this material, and I'm not going to stop because I think it's crucial to what we're doing. We are in the middle of what I now call a 40 years war. The war is between 2 hypotheses, comprehension hypothesis and the skill building hypothesis.
Hold on. I forgot how live streams work.
Oh.
So live streams work where we have to wait for you all to log in. So we're going to start over to make sure that everybody's in. The people who just said that they were joining us, because otherwise they'll miss the beginning.
And I can sip some more coffee.
You can sip some more coffee. Yes. And say, hey, we're going to start a live stream here in just a minute, as soon as everybody's logged in.
David Letterman said, without coffee, I have no trace of a personality. Johann Sebastian Bach said, without coffee, I am like a piece of dried up goat meat. A famous therapist said, most of my clients are in their 60s, and they say they generally feel that they're about 30, 35 years old, except if they haven't had coffee. Then they feel 107. And I was about 107 when I got out of bed this morning, but it's working its way down. I think I'm hitting the high 70s at the moment. And by the time I finish this, I'll be down to 55, I think. Here's looking at you.
All right, so again, we are live streaming from Denver, Colorado with Dr. Stephen Krashen. And it looks like people are joining. So here we go again. We're going to start over from the beginning so that if you weren't here for the first minute and you're just logging in now, you're not missing anything. Any way to increase the volume? I don't know. Perhaps.
Okay.
Let's see. Give me a second. Maybe just by getting closer.
Okay, I'll get closer too.
I think that's about it. Otherwise, you're just.
Okay.
That's
just
good.
Get my
You're
nose.
good. You're good. You're good.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. I'm Steve Krashen, and I'm going to talk about the intermediate level, and I'm going to start by talking about language acquisition in general. And the last, we are involved in what I've been calling a 40 years war between 2 views of how we develop literacy and how we acquire language. The comprehension hypothesis has been around since, before I got on the scene. Frank Smith talked about it, Kenneth Goodman did, James Asher did, and that says we acquire language when we understand it. And the crucial part is, first you get comprehensible input, the result of that is all the skills, vocabulary, grammar. The other hypothesis, the opposing hypothesis, which is really an axiom, I'm afraid, is skill building. First you start by consciously learning the rules. Then you practice them over and over until they become kind of automatic, and you get them fine-tuned by getting your errors corrected. And then someday, if you keep working on it, it becomes automatic, and you can use the language. This is a delayed gratification hypothesis, and what the research has been telling me steadily for the last 40 plus years, the gratification never comes. Overwhelmingly, our studies, other people's studies, show that comprehensible input wins over skill building every time. And I think I've devoted a significant percentage of my waking hours to showing that this is true. Research from all over the place. Method comparisons, correlational studies, case histories, etc. It's kind of overwhelming. So comprehensible input is the winner. It's not only just the winner, it's also more pleasant and a lot more fun for teachers and for students. If you want to give people comprehensible input, they have to pay attention to it. In order to get them to pay attention, it has to be interesting. So we must have things interesting in the classroom, which puts us way ahead. My conjecture, in fact, it's no longer a conjecture, it's now a hypothesis because I found a little bit of evidence, is that most students in class don't like skill building. Very few. In fact, a lot of them absolutely hate it. There are a few who like it. I just discovered a study published in Canada where they looked at kids in schools in Montreal learning French, studying English. Anywhere from 2 to 5% say they like grammar a lot. That's all. I'm afraid they're the ones who become language teachers. You see what the problem is. So comprehensible input is win-win. It works, it's pleasant. Skill building, lose-lose. It doesn't work. It's not particularly pleasant for most people. For the public, though, it's the only game in town. It's not a hypothesis, it's an axiom. And I want to reduce it from axiom to at least hypothesis. The intermediate level, I'm just going to do one aspect of it. I generally divide the intermediate level into two separate things you can do. One is content-based teaching, called sheltered teaching. The other is free reading, reading for pleasure. And there are ways of combining them both, which I think is really going to be our solution to problems of academic language, etc. Let me tell you a little bit about the research on it. Again, overwhelmingly, the students who read more do better. And I want to tell you just a few of the most recent studies to add to the huge pile of stuff that's already out there. The research comes from first language, second language, English, other languages, etc. Just give you a piece of things that have got me excited. In the UK, in London, there's a group of researchers at the University of London who've been following the same people for 42 years, since they were little babies. And they've been giving them tests, publishing articles, looking at their developmental path. The last study is relevant to us. Native speakers of English, they gave them a vocabulary test. The best predictor of vocabulary, of course, was reading, and it was fiction reading. Middlebrow and highbrow fiction was a better predictor of vocabulary size than nonfiction. Very interesting these days, because there's been so much emphasis on nonfiction in school. Well, it turns out fiction is very, very good for you. Here's what's cool for us, and for old people like me. The effect was there regardless of how much you read when you were younger, when you were 5, when you were 15, or being read to, your print environment. It was there regardless of your vocabulary size when you were 5 or 15. It's what you're reading now that contributes to your vocabulary growth. So these people at 42 years old, best predictor was their recent reading. You can get better at any age. The language acquisition device never turns off. All this stuff is you've got to be at grade level by 3rd grade or you're all going to jail. None of this seems to be true. When I get to be 42, I'm going to start reading. I think this is great stuff. Another piece of new information, I'll give you a little formula that gives you the whole thing, and then I'll explain it. Each hour is 1/2 point. Let me tell you what I mean. Study by Benico Mason, case histories. We did a statistical analysis. People who were reading English for pleasure, her former students, they lived in Japan, and they were doing English as a foreign language. They all read different things. They read what they wanted. They ranged in age from people in their 20s to people in their 70s. Benico kept track of how much they were reading, what books they were reading, and their scores on the TOEIC test. The TOEIC test is this big deal. It's a standardized test of English. In some countries, it's considered, the gold standard. Your TOEIC score counts. The scores range anywhere from 100 to 1,000. 250 is kind of the dividing line where you're now beginning intermediate. If you get over 250, you get 800, 900, you're really good. Here's what we found. People read anywhere from a few months to a year and a half. For each hour you read, you gain a little more than 1/2 point on the TOEIC. For each hour you read, and it didn't matter what, subjects agreed with each other, you gain a little more than 1/2 point, which means if you read an hour a day for 3 years for pleasure, you'll go all the way, from the lowest level all the way to the highest level. This is great news. This not only shows reading works, but gives you a path. I want to talk now about the practical side and what the current controversies are and some useful studies that have just come out. There's been a backlash in the language arts profession concerning sustained silent reading, SSR. I like sustained silent reading. I think we should be doing more of it in our foreign language classes, and we're greatly helped by all the nice readers that are coming out. They're really good. And it's nice starting, say, second year or so to set a little time aside for kids to read for pleasure in class. Not the only thing you do, but one of several things. And this has been attacked. Books, about 5 books I've got on my shelf of people who say, this is fake reading, this is no good. Reading needs to be loud, and reading shouldn't be silent. It should be, you must have discussion, etc.
Excuse me, what was that test called?
TOEIC, T-O-E-I-C, TOEIC. Anyway, I have looked at the arguments. Oh, they call it, by the way, sustained silent page turning, fake reading. I have looked at all the papers that have been published and the books, and I've written a response to it. First of all, and this is English native language arts, but we're going to be facing this as well. People are going to complain about it, I'm afraid. I looked at all the studies. It does happen, but it's quite rare. If you wait for about a month and let kids get started finding books, you see very few kids who aren't reading. Most of them are reading if you do common sense things. Where you find fake reading and non-reading, number one, you don't have a good book collection. The books are too hard. The books are boring. The teacher imposes rigid rules. You have to have your desk clean. You can't ever get up. You can't ever do anything but read your book. You must read books and not magazines and graphic novels. You have to finish every book you start, etc. When you don't do those things and you do it reasonably, it works, and I think they're all common sense guidelines. I did a study with Kyung-Suk Cho, we just published it, again based on case histories. We looked at English as a foreign language students who develop long-term reading habits and are really improving. And what we found, they all had access to books. None of them were ever tested on what they read. They didn't do skill building. They got to select what they wanted to. They had a quiet place to read. It wasn't rigid. You didn't have these, I think, bogus things going on in the fake reading classes. Well, I want to go back to the past and bring up some ideas from the old days that I think need to be brought back and revised, and I think they're all wonderful. Comic book reading, graphic novel reading. The evidence is on our side. We know from the regular language arts literature, comic book reading is associated with better reading. Kids who read comics read somewhat better. Wonderful study of comic books encouraging reading called Spider-Man in the Library. Came out in 1981. Brilliant researchers. They put comic books in a junior high school library. Did not allow them to circulate. You had to go to the library to read the comic book. They then looked at library traffic, kids going in and out of the library, and circulation of non-comic book material before and after. Library traffic nearly doubled. The amount of non-comic book material taken out went up 30%. So the evidence is in favor of comic books. For adult students, we have a little bit of evidence from our brilliant colleague Kyung-Suk Cho, who did a study a couple of years ago, and we just got it published in the IJFLT.com journal, which I assume you are all subscribing to. Free stuff, everybody. Free journal, IJFLT.com. You are now officially subscribers. Anyway, the title of the article was "The Spirit of Elvis is in Your Living Room." Okay, your cat could be an extraterrestrial. Comes from a song by Weird Al Yankovic. Kyung-Suk had adults, Koreans living in the United States, who were medium in English, having trouble with English, wanted to improve. She asked 20 of them, and they all volunteered, to read 10 minutes a day from the National Enquirer. 8 of them did it. 3 of them refused. A number of them felt it was below their dignity, etc. And of the 8 that did it, 5 continued to do it after we were done. One of them read it like a textbook, starting on page 1 and underlining the words, and gave that up after a few days. The rest of them automatically did things right. They did narrow reading. They found the articles they liked. They loved it. They said, now I understand America. I know what's going on here. We figured you really do. It is nice to discuss these things in class and teach it. One of the ladies sent away for the magic reducing cream. Should have told her about that. Anyway, the National Enquirer knows something that the Washington Post doesn't know. that most people are not concerned with the details of the G20 meeting, the House Ways and Means Committee, the latest on, carbon footprints and all that stuff. They want things that apply to their lives. So more reading that is absolutely relevant, that'll give them the competence, I think, to go on to these things. We've also looked at what books children really like. And it turns out children do not go for the prize-winning books. They don't go for the Caldecott winners, the Newbery winners. They like basura. They like junky books that are interesting and fun. They like Goosebumps. They like wimpy kid stuff. So it's good to, when you let kids decide what's going to be in the library, etc., and the classroom library, you get a very different choice than what grown-ups pick, who choose. If you take a look at the Newbery Award winners over the last 20 years, you will recognize very few titles, very few things that are popular. Here's another great idea. High-tech. So high-tech that Bill Gates would be thrilled. It's called the STAR Method, an article in the School Library Journal. Ladushka Adrians is the author. I liked it so much I published a letter to the editor praising it. High school library. You like a book, she says to the students, take a pencil and put a star in the inside cover. Then you return it. That's it. That's high tech. Then other kids go to the library, they open the book, they see a book with 25 stars, they know what's moving and they'll want to read it. Brilliant idea. We also have a little bit of research on or a little bit of thinking about the advantage of bringing food into the school library. People read at Starbucks. Reading in the library, not such a bad idea. This work was done by my being an assistant to the great Jim Trelease. We were in a bookstore one day, and he said, "Look at all these people eating and reading. Isn't this terrific?" So he started giving the advantages, and I just kept writing it down, and we published it. We think that we are not sure if electronic books have a future. We don't know. Right now, that's the rage in library science. Bring in more books that are electronic, make it high-tech. In fact, we find the bookless library here and there. Jeff McQuillan and I have just finished a paper on this, and here's what we found. Electronic books right now are the property of the wealthy. It's for people who can afford e-book readers or other forms of computers where you can read e-books, and the e-books themselves. People with individual incomes under $30,000 are not e-book readers. Above $75,000, we call middle class today, a lot of them are e-book readers. They cost too much. They're $15 or so. It's about the same price as buying a hardcover book. You can't share it. You can't give it away. There's no used e-book market, etc., which is so important for sharing books. Not only that, you got to have a reader. In the old days, it was getting a Kindle or a Nook or all that stuff, which are very expensive. Even now that ebooks can be read in different formats, not everybody has the technical access and can do it. Libraries are helping a little, but right now school libraries' collections are very few electronic books, making up something like 3% of the total circulation of both public libraries and school libraries. And very few of them have computers and ebook readers available for people to borrow and use, etc. So libraries come in and they say, this is great, we've got all this stuff and all this ebook stuff, and it's simply, in my opinion, increasing the gap between the rich and the poor. Someday, yes, when ebooks are 50 cents and you can share them, and we can get an ebook reader for $5, I will be the biggest fan. Then it's going to help solve the literacy problem worldwide. And of course, they get better and better all the time. But right now, it's beyond the reach of most people.
Dr. Krashen, teachers are mentioning some problems with that, like marking in the library books, and here are two really good suggestions. Your classroom library, that may not matter, putting a post-it in every book, or hanging a poster in the classroom, hanging near the classroom library.
Great ideas.
Lots of ways to get around it.
Okay, I recommend that you put your money where your pen is. You got ideas like that, comment on it, write it up, put in a short notice in the IJFLT journal. That's what it's for. Let me give you a guilt trip. If you have a good idea and we just heard several very good ideas. You guys are going to think of things that I won't. I am an ivory tower university professor with no knowledge of your day-to-day problems. That's for sure. I could follow you around for 3 years and be your assistant in class and go through TPRS training, etc., and I still wouldn't know what you would know. So, got to have this information from you. Write it up. If you have anything that's helpful to anybody, it's your obligation to share it with others. Let me be very brutal about this. You have an uncle, your favorite uncle, who has prostate cancer. You meet a young man at a party. You say, what do you do? Well, I'm a biochemist. We're working on prostate cancer. Do you have how's the work going? Oh, we've got it. We've known this for 3 years. We've got the cure. It's this combination of vitamins that's going to cut out, these bad chemicals and get rid of the bad cells and all that. Well, have you told anybody? When do we see this in the newspapers? Oh, it's just for our own satisfaction. We're not on this ego trip. We're not going to publish. This is all career stuff. No. This is our currency. This is our obligation. So please consider writing up something short on these ideas and send them to IJFLT, and they can go into the teacher-to-teacher column. It's these everyday ideas that are so important. The university professors have no idea. One of the best things that's happened to me professionally is I spent 4 solid days with Jason Fritz. Thanks again, Karen, for introducing me to Jason all those years ago. This is really cool. We did a conference in the New Republic, Czech Republic in Brno, and had a lot of talking on the airplane back and forth. And one of the things he told me is that one of the things you must include in teacher preparation and education is stuff like how to draw pictures, how to use cardboard, all right? How to make input comprehensible using props, etc. The ideas you just suggested, some of you, are in that category of very important things that professors who are more interested in, like me, pedants like me, who are more interested in footnotes and citations, are never going to know. So please share it. Please keep contributing them. Do we have anything else before I go on my tirade?
Does anyone have any questions before we keep going? Olga, I don't understand your question. Do you want to try and rephrase it? And we'll see if we can answer it. Cassandra, that happens. Just start again. We haven't stopped broadcasting.
We're waiting for a question, ladies and gentlemen.
If there are any questions, we'll stop right now after talking about this section, and then, or we can go on to the next. I think we're going to go on to the next. I don't see any questions, but I'll wait, hold on. He mentioned to write the ideas and send them where?
IJFLT.com. Just go there and you'll be connected to the journal. Take a look at the last issue. It's free download, sports fans, absolutely free. Journals cost too much money. And there are a couple now that are coming out that are open access, and ours is one of them, and this is terrific. And you will see the instructions right there on how to submit things. Very simple. And take a look and see what other people have written in.
The instructions on how to submit are inside of each journal. You can click on the first page, and there's a link to it, so it's not even hard to find. And it'll tell you what the requirements are for submitting. So I have a couple of questions here. Do podcasts and audiobooks have similar benefits?
Yes. Audiobooks are fabulous. The research on audiobooks, of course, has been exclusively with first language, but they have found just what you know, that people use them when they're doing other things, mostly driving. I live in Los Angeles. Oh my gosh, I would go nuts without audiobooks. I'm constantly going through audiobooks. There are very few in other languages. Oh my, when Harry Potter came out, Jim Dale, wow. It was so exciting. You'd be driving places, you'd pull up at your destination, sit in the car and wait to hear the end of it. I'm a member of 2 libraries, so I can get their audiobook collections, etc. I pay for one local library and one in my community. And people do it when they exercise, when they drive. The impact on literacy development is pretty much the same. huge impact on vocabulary, listening comprehension, grammar, knowledge of the world. Fiction builds your knowledge of the world. People who read massive amounts know more about history, geography, practical knowledge, etc. You get habits of mind, a better sense of what other people are thinking. So yes, it does not have every single advantage that print reading does, but my gosh, it's wonderful. And what I'm happy to say now is that a number of the books that are coming out with the TPRS publishers now have audio versions. You can send in and download it, or there's a CD available, which I think is a great thing. In fact, we just finished the second volume, Linda Lee and I, of our collection, Shehao Khan, and the second book is out. And I've been listening to Linda, because I'm a Mandarin student now, and I've been listening to her wonderful reading. It's so nice looking at the print, etc. You don't have to look at the print while you're reading. Just looking at the reading is fine. If you want to look at the print, go ahead. But this is a great source of oral comprehensible input. Oral comprehensible input has been one of our problems, because kids cannot, if we're doing languages like German and French, they're not going to hear a lot of it in the community. So we have to build the library of easy things to listen to, and audiobooks is one of them. So yes, let's push forward on this.
A couple more questions, but I think they're getting answered. Ideas for increasing classroom libraries for free to little money.
Okay, right away. At the basic level, beginning level, we can do this. Within a month, we can have heaven on earth. We can have massive classroom libraries. Here's the idea. In our classes, we do a lot of stories. We create stories. We co-create stories with kids. I'd say a good percentage of these stories are really good. In fact, you've had this experience. You ask children to write something creative, and you get 20 attempts, and out of the 20 attempts, 3 or 4 are as good as anything you've ever seen. Okay, Darcy Pippin was sharing with me some of the things her students are producing in Spanish. They're wonderful. They're so entertaining. They're beautiful. Let's make them available. Let's put them on the internet. Let's share them with each other for free and give our students credit for their contributions. No publishers, no money, no nothing. We have started this with Mandarin. We've called it the Great Mandarin Reading Project. It's on Heiyun Lu's website, Ignite Chinese, and a number of us are contributing to it, things from our students. I have written 3 essays in Mandarin, which you can check out, okay? So we can do this overnight with all the talent that we have worldwide. Your class in Rhode Island, your kids' essays can be read by someone in Alaska and back and forth. So that's an easy one to solve, and I think we should go for it.
There's one question that's kind of going in a different direction, so maybe, I don't know if you want to answer it right now, but we have one teacher in our group who is skill-based and against TPRS or CI. Any thoughts to get her on board?
If I knew the answer to that, this all would have happened a long time ago. We have been working on this for a long time. The comprehensible input hypothesis came out in 1975, okay? Quite a while ago. And there has been, in some ways, really good progress. We have this in the area of foreign language, as we know, the TPRS movement, the natural approach people, now the story listening people have made enormous contributions, and as people are using it. We have joined forces, not as much as we should, with whole language, which has a very similar philosophy. Free voluntary reading has had a resurgence. Good bilingual programs based on the same principles, but there's still a lot of ignorance about it. The people that I am most interested in getting to are not the hardcore who will never believe it, but the open-minded middle. People are open to these ideas, and the way they're going to get it is through seeing other teachers doing it, experiencing it themselves. Once you experience it yourself, you see it. So the demonstrations that we do at conferences, etc. And eventually that's a way of getting to parents. In 2008, I think it was, I was invited to Thailand to a private school, international school there, where Linda Lee was on the faculty. And I got there and I discovered that, okay, let me give you some background. This is Thailand in the Bangkok area. And the parents of the school are largely of Chinese descent and have a great deal of admiration for Chinese culture, do not speak Mandarin. She offered a free class for the parents in Mandarin once a week for a whole year. 1/3 of the parents signed up for the class.
Which was 70 people.
70 people. That's how and they hung in there. That's how they got the methodology, by feeling it themselves. The kind of Steve Krashen theoretical talks are not going to convince everybody, obviously, but you feel it yourself. You actually see it happen. Again, when this started in 2007, it was a Fluency Fast meeting, and Karen Rowan, who's in charge of today's show, came to my dorm room at 7 o'clock in the morning with latte and say, "Get out of bed. You are going to Linda's class, and you're going to hear Jason Fritz. You're going to see these people." "No, I'm not." "Yes, you are." So finally, I went to the classes, and I saw it, and I was already involved with natural approach, comprehensible input, and I saw the power of the storytelling, the power of the personalization, the power of these teachers' overwhelmingly friendly and open attitudes toward the students. And it was that experience. I could have read all the theoretical papers, but it was actually being in the class for 15 hours, going to Jason's intermediate Spanish classes, and now seeing all these wonderful teachers do it, that has had the impact. This is what I think we need, the actual experience of it. I hope that helps.
I'm going to scroll back and make sure I haven't missed any questions, but I think I'm caught up. If I missed any, let me know. It's possible that it's Mike who has the link to the already Spanish stories online. If somebody has the link to his page, could you put it in this feed? I see his name, but I don't know what the site is, and that way it'll be there. There we go. fvrclasslibrary.wordpress.com. And I think
Good.
I'm caught up. I'll see if
That's
I'm...
great. See, we get together, we got these solutions, we share them. It's wonderful.
All right. If there are any more questions, we'll let him move on. And we're
I'm gonna move on and close this up pretty soon, but I want to ask and answer the burning question that everybody has right now. Professor Krashen, Dr. Krashen, how can we access your books and your writings? Thank you for asking.
That question's obvious. The question that was asked was, comment. Stephen Krashen loves Harry Potter. I love him even more.
Oh, Harry Potter's wonderful. Let me talk about Harry Potter. Dolores Umbridge. J.K. Rowling is a brilliant writer, and if you look at her stuff on education, it's amazing. If you compare, like, History of Magic, taught by this ghost, with Defense Against the Dark Arts and Potions, you see brilliant teaching compared to horrible teaching, okay? You see the caricatures of teachers. Gilderoy Lockhart, my favorite character, Harry, celebrity is as celebrity does. Your homework assignment is to, what would Gilderoy Lockhart think of the following? Dolores Umbridge, who took over Hogwarts for a while, had this great conversation with Harry. Harry set up a class, alternative class in Defense Against the Dark Arts, because it was taken over by a pedant, and he set up this underground class. And of course, Dolores Umbridge, the temporary headmaster, found out about it. And Harry said, the way we're doing it, why are you doing this? The way you're doing it now, there's no real world application. It's just theory. She says, Harry, there is no real world. Tests are what it's all about. So I wrote some satirical articles that Dolores Umbridge has just been appointed Assistant Secretary of Education, in the U.S. Department of Education. She would unfortunately fit right in. Yeah, J.K. Rowling is what fiction is all about. One of my students wrote an essay, "Is Hermione smart?" Very good question. Yes, no, both, etc. So yes, Harry Potter, absolutely. Let me get to the big question and where you can find my stuff. Books, not so much anymore. My old books are available for free download at www.sdkrashen.com. Operators are standing by. No, it's just there. They're on the first page on the left. I did a workshop in Mexico 2 years ago, and one of the local professors downloaded 250 copies of Principles in Practice. I autographed every one of them. I was thrilled. So yes, download them, share them, etc. I'm still writing books here and there, but you can be sure that if anything's in a book, it's also on the website. They're not all my articles, but there are several hundred articles already posted on the website. Free download. Do not ask for permission. Just do it. You may share it with anyone except Donald Trump. How's that? But that doesn't matter anyway. So yes, all the stuff is there, and more scholars are doing this, because most of the journals are not like IJFLT.com. Most of the other journals are writing long, brutally difficult articles that are largely irrelevant to what we're doing. So a few of the others, we're doing it, others are doing online, open access, free. We've got to get information out to people. Jim Cummins has his stuff on his website. A lot of people are doing this. This is the future.
All right. Thank you very much for joining us. If you haven't done a live stream before, you can click the share button. However, it will only be shareable if people are on this listserv, because it's a closed group. So if it's not working, that's why. Are there any other technical questions before we finish? We will be at IFLT in Denver for the rest of the day, and then San Antonio, Texas,
Fluency Fast.
For Fluency Fast, Advanced Spanish with Jason, and I'm doing Intermediate Spanish teaching Don Quixote, and Sabrina will be teaching Advanced French, and then the National TPRS Conference is the following week, and then we are going to sleep for the rest of the summer. So thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you soon.
Good.
Wait.